AI and robotics. That's what we're discussing today. Two emerging fields that have been around already for decades. But because of the breakthroughs and the advancements in each field, we're now going to be seeing some massive changes coming to our world quickly. We're going to be talking about those, so make sure that you stick through with the whole video so that you don't miss a beat. What questions are we going to be answering? First, what are the technologies that drive artificial intelligence and robotics together to function and have the impact that they can in our lives? Second, we'll also talk about some potentialities. What are the potential futures that can emerge from this transfusion of these two exciting technological fields? And then also we'll talk about some of the things that will happen in your life over the next few years or even within the next year, and then wrap up with some of the concerns and overall outlook, my take on where robotics and AI will take us. So as you see here, we have Atlas. He is the Boston Dynamics robot, and he is an example of one of the leaders in the field and their take on our AI servants. Maybe, or are they helpers? Are they our masters? Or are they our end? Stephen Hawking once said, the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Now let's start to unpack that. Clearly, Stephen Hawking was a genius. And it's true, but it's only a potentiality. There are a few different outcomes. One is he's completely right. And we develop artificial intelligence and robotics that totally screw us over. And they work together to build weapons or create bombs or whatever would be the most effective way to do it ultimately. First, and crash our energy system, disconnect our internet, those sort of things, and then wipe us out so that it could have the resources that it wants to do whatever it wants, but it doesn't have a want, it's more of a goal, right? It's a machine, so it doesn't have desires like we do, but it does have goals and objectives. That is a possibility. The second future, let's just go in the middle, is where robotics, we build the right safeguards, we build the right technologies and backstops and firewalls to protect us from this sort of future. We build artificial intelligence in the exact right way. Now, this is also a possibility. What would this do for our lives? Robots would drive us to work, except they would be, of course, a car. You'd have an autonomous vehicle, which is, again, super close. But what else? Robots would do all the physical labor. Robots would be at your house to wake you up in the morning and make your coffee. Robots would take care of the kids when you're working. Robots could do a whole host of things. And wow, I never thought about that one. But that, of course, is semi-dystopian, but also could be a solving or mitigating factor for some of the challenges we're having when it comes to reproduction, more humans being born. But that's a topic for a whole nother video. But what else, right? Anything you can imagine that with robotics and AI that's positive. So for example, space mining, if we could go and mine asteroids, there are trillions and trillions of dollars worth of valuable resources. So we could load up a starship full of Optimus Tesla robots that could go then to a asteroid and do things that are totally unthinkable that humans could never do. They could help us to explore further into the reaches of space or colonize Mars. Imagine that. You send 10,000 Optimus to Mars to build a wonderful society before humans ever go. That all is possible in this ideal state. But what's the third state? The third state is, well, they become our masters and we end up serving robots and artificial intelligence. And maybe it's some sort of, we feel like we're in control, but they're actually in control. Or it's a full, they're completely oppressing us. These are all potential futures. And are there more positive futures that I could talk about? Is the ratio 75% to 25%? Who knows, right? Because these are all just potentialities. But it is really good to explore those so that we know and can build appropriately or plan appropriately according to what potentiality is most likely. Now, what do we really mean when we say AI and robotics? So artificial intelligence, you might just think, oh, it's my ChatGPT. It helps me to write my papers or read or be a leader and be a CEO, to make decisions, to think through problems. That's all true. But as we covered in another video, there are tons of different types of artificial intelligence. And then when you add robotics, what is it? It is now the access to the physical world, being able to pick up and put down objects, being able to interact, being able to protect or attack, which we'll also talk about soon. So these are all the core technologies. So if you have a robot, and this is really so much of the field of robotics to date, is building machines that can take in data and then learn from that. That's your machine learning components. Also your neural networks. The machine learning is feeding the neural networks to improve the decision making. Now from there, let's talk about one thing that we learned with generative AI that's now emerging in the field of robotics. And that is, we found with generative AI that the more data you put into an algorithm, the more data you put into a model, the better it gets at serving humanity. Now, we've known this in robotics, but the truth is we're now starting to develop these data sets which are filled with real world data. Because imagine Boston Dynamics has been testing their robots and collecting data for decades now. But when it really comes down to a robot out walking around every day, having so much data that we can generate near perfection in its operation, there is a massive demand for that, just like there's a massive demand for the data in generative AI. So that is an emerging field. I've seen some papers on it in ARVIX and really good studies where people are now developing robots specifically for gathering data. So that is such a big driver. You can make a robot, you have intelligence, artificial intelligence, but the data needs to be there to train them. So that's a massive demand. Then imagine this. You could have a robot, but with natural language processing, now we can talk to it. And that would, of course, open up a lot of things in our lives where we have a robot who can make our coffee and then take care of the kid for 5 minutes and then wash the dishes and make the bed. All these sort of things would be instructions that we could give to our robots because of natural language processing. And then even with generative AI, it could talk back to us. That's pretty cool, right? So that's a fun and exciting future, unless it's accusing us or trying to kill us. So on the other side, we get more into the robotic side of things, and that's the sensors that take in the data. So you have sensors that feel, sensors that see, sensors that, all of these senses are now being fed by these sensors that we're putting on the robots. So these robots will have many sensors, just like with a Tesla autonomous vehicle. They have cameras all around so that it can make decisions that humans could never do. And then actuators, you have to be able to move the robot. And then control systems, which ideally would be programmed with the right safeguards. So how is robotics going to impact your life? You've already seen for decades robotic arms in factories, and they've been able to augment human capabilities while allowing lots of people to still work in factories. And it's given us a massive boost in productivity, which in the ultimate case, that ideal case scenario, that's what we're after. We want to free humans up so that they can focus on learning, they can focus on thinking, creating, making videos, making movies, making music, thinking about strategy, where we're going as humanity, being leaders. Those sort of things come from robotics serving us in a great way. You've also seen surgical robots. Now, the question I have for you is, would you prefer to have a surgery by a robot or by a human, or a mixture of both? We are seeing both, let's say all of them being used in combination and also independently, and various data being generated from that. And of course, if you've seen with Amazon, they have robots in their warehouses, which are picking up and moving packages and helping people to focus on packages that aren't too heavy or don't have these odd dimensions, which I don't think the robots are actually there yet to be able to handle those sort of packages. I remember I worked at UPS, this was back in college, and I worked on the 4 a.m. shift, and some of the packages we got were oddly shaped and very heavy. So as you can imagine, injuries happen from lifting those sort of packages. That will be a big transformation, but then you again have to realize that a lot of those people would have to go get new jobs. Now, let's talk about a big one though, and that's the Optimus robot. So here is our closest path, or at least our most vocal path. There might be another startup or another company that's emerging as well, but Elon plans to have Optimus robots for sale for just $20,000 by 2025. So would you buy one? I think I would. I think it'd be great. And I trust anything that Elon does personally. So I think that it would be a good investment. And it's one of our nearest terms positive improvements that can come to your life from robotics on a big scale, right? Having an Optimus robot that can do multiple things is much different from having an intelligent coffee maker. So would it make coffee? That's also a possibility, but it'd be able to do a lot of other things too that can make your life better, and that's what it's about. Let's get into just the broader field of robotics in general, and then get into some of the kind of fringe use cases which could be dangerous. So we've talked about AI robotics, the Optimus robot and the Boston Dynamics robot are these humanoid robots. But what about swarm robots? All right. Yes, swarm robots in a general case is about multiple robots working together to perform specific tasks. But if you've kept up to date at all with what's going on in warfront zones, we'll just say, what you're seeing is a lot of robots packed with bombs that are used on both the offensive and the defensive side of warfare. Now, of course, they're human controlled at the moment, but in my mind, what's the next step? And I'm not freaking out here. It's just, we're on a very logical path to have deadly robots. It's not a stretch of the imagination at this point that we just flip a switch and at some point that robot is now making the decision and not the human being. That's a realistic outcome that I believe we are headed towards. So then, once you do, that's where you start to open up the potentialities of a bad future. There are, I believe, regulations, rules, global restrictions on these sort of things. But in the case of a disaster for a country, those might be broken. And of course, we have the international community that would maybe try to rally against them. But as you've seen, there's a lot of gray area, and most people can't think accurately or, let's say, decisively, unitedly to say, that's good, that's bad, don't do this, do that. We really don't have those things figured out from a human perspective. So I think we could see emerging AI weapons sooner rather than later. But let's talk about the ethical concerns. Before I made this slide, I actually didn't realize this, but let's say you have a robot in your home that has all these sensors. Right now, when we have our phones, you've heard it and we've all know it. If I say, hey Siri, there she is. So she's listening in some capacity, right? Apple says only when you say, hey Siri, that's when she starts listening. But who knows? Imagine now you have a robot in your house that has eyes, and now you have cameras on you 24/7, and you also have a robot that could potentially be hacked to kill you, which would also be pretty bad. So there's privacy violations, autonomous weapons risks, and other things. So some of the ones that we also should address is bias. Bias is really hard to overcome because in some cases people can say biases are there because of statistics. And when we look at what machine learning algorithms are, they're based on statistics. But are statistics driven by human biases? These are things that we have to work on and fix. And then the other is job displacement. But let's really look at the long-term scale of history. Right now in the United States, we have a 3% unemployment rate. That means out of the approximately 200 million adults in the US workforce, only 6 million of those do not have jobs. So why am I making that point? Because even with AI, even with robotics in factories, even with robotics doing lifting and surgeries and all these other things, and automation, which we've had for many years in software as a service, humans always have found something to do. So that's my take on it. We will find something to do. That something to do will be better. And if our politics, which is maybe the most unlikely thing, but if they did evolve along with technology, we could see some pretty interesting things, maybe universal basic income or other programs. You could rent out your robot, you could rent out your car taxi, the autonomous taxi. Those are all ways you could make money. And then what do? You make YouTube videos, right? You make YouTube videos with you and your friends traveling around the world. You talk about how anybody can make money online by just setting up their own robot, robotaxi, or any kind of robot service business. That is a potential future. And I'm sure 100% that we will see that. So, in conclusion, everybody, the future is soon. As we talked about, the Optimus robot is going to be in our lives by 2025. That's like, 7 months away? Imagine that. And it's only $20,000. So you could actually have a robot by next year, this time next year, in exactly 1 year, you could have a robot making you coffee, waking you up, making the bed, taking care of your kids while you're working, and all those other things. What's my take? Ultimately, I am a technologist, an entrepreneur, and an optimist. I believe that we can create the right safeguards and the right path can be taken. Now, I will add a step further to this. the chances that robots by themselves decide to wipe out humanity, which would suck, I believe is less than humanity choosing to use robots or other forms of artificial intelligence to wipe out each other. And what percentage is each probability? I have no idea. But I will tell you, I'm going to get a robot and I'm going to make videos with it, and you will see it whenever I'm able to get one. So I hope that this video was enlightening to you and that you stayed all the way through to see my take, so that you can hear more about these emerging fields of technology, not just AI, not just robotics, but also quantum computing and space travel and space mining and all these other exciting things, and how they can be used to improve our lives through business, through innovation, and through application and the right principles and the right people working together. Hit subscribe right away, hit the notification bell, and be back, because I'm going to be creating content just like this for you on the regular. Have a phenomenal day, and I'll see you soon.